Hello everyone, in the previous video I have explained how to prove if a parallelogram is a rectangle by using the slope formula. This time I will be explaining it by using the distance formula. First, let me summarize what I'm going to do. I'm going to show that the opposite sides are congruent, like BC and AD, by using the distance formula for B and C. And then I'm going to do the distance for point A and D. They must be the same. If they are the same, I'm going to move on to the shorter sides, BA and CD. By doing the distance formula for these two pairs, I'm going to show they are congruent. If they are congruent, I'm going to move on to the diagonals. If they're not congruent, I'm going to stop and then say, hey, you know what? This figure is not a rectangle. But if they are the same, just like the other two opposite sides, I'm going to move on to the diagonals, AC and BD. They must be congruent as well. In that case, I'm going to say that the figure is a rectangle. In any of these steps, if I realize that any of the opposite sides or the diagonals are not congruent, I'm going to say this is not a rectangle. So let's get started by writing the distance formula for those who doesn't remember what it is. Distance formula is, we are going to choose 2 points. We are going to label them like x1, y1, x2, y2. We are going to subtract the x values and then square it plus y2 minus y1 squared. This is going to give me the distance from one point to another. So let's do the distance for BC. It must be the same as AD, by the way. So point B and C right here, the distance of BC is equal to, subtract the x values, 4 minus negative 2 squared plus 1 minus 3 squared. Please don't forget about the parentheses. The first pair of numbers is going to become 4 plus 2, which is 6. Because we have two negatives, it becomes positive. It's going to become 4 plus 2, which is 6. And then we are going to square this number. Plus 1 minus 3 is negative 2. And we are going to square that number. 6 squared is 36. Negative 2 squared means negative 2 times negative 2. It becomes positive 4. Because if we multiply two negatives, it becomes positive. So we have radical 40 for the side BC. Now we are going to do a distance for its opposite side, AD. They must be the same. Distance from point A to D must be the same as BC. So let's do this one, AD. The first and the last point, subtract the x values, 3 minus negative 3 squared plus negative 2 minus 0 squared. It equals, so the first one becomes 3 plus 3, or we can say it becomes 6. The second one, negative 2 minus 0 is still negative 2. We are going to square that number. As you see, these two numbers and these two are the same. So the answer must be the same, which is 36 plus 4 equals radical 40. Now we are done with these two sides. They are congruent. Let's write the conclusion of these two. That means BC, just BC, is the same as AD. Their lengths are equal. That's our conclusion for these two distance formula. Now let's do the distance for AB, the side on the left, and see if it is the same as CD. So A and B are right here. First, subtract the first numbers, negative 2 minus negative 3 squared plus 3 minus 0 squared. So negative 2 minus negative 3 becomes negative 2 plus 3, or we can say 1. We are going to square that number. 3 minus 0 is 3. We are going to square this one as well. 1 squared is 1. 3 squared is 9. Add these together, we have radical 10 for side AB. And now let's calculate the length of side CD. Right here, we have point C and D to do the distance formula. The last 2 points. Distance from C to D is equal to subtract the first numbers. You can do 4 minus 3 or 3 minus 4, it doesn't matter, plus, I started from 4, so I'm going to continue with 1 minus negative 2 squared equals, the first one, 4 minus 3 is 1, you're going to square that number, plus 1 minus negative 2 is the same as 1 plus 2 or 3. Now we're going to square that. As you see, these two numbers and these two are exactly the same, so your answers must be the same. Now, the conclusion from these two is the length of AB and the length of CD are the same. Now, the opposite sides are the same, but this doesn't mean that the figure is a rectangle. This just proves that what we have is a parallelogram. Now, we need to see if the diagonals are the same to say, yes, this is a parallelogram and also it is a rectangle. Now, let's do the distance for the diagonals. Point B and D, point B and D, because this is one of the diagonals, BD. So distance from point B to D is the same as, now we're going to do the same thing by subtracting x values, 3 minus negative 2 squared plus negative 2 minus 3 squared. And it equals, right here we have 3 plus 2 or 5 squared plus, now negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5 squared. So 5 squared is 25. Negative 5 squared is the same, because if we multiply two negatives, we get a positive number. 25 plus 25 is radical 50. Now I know that the length of BD is radical 50. Let's see the length of AC. It must be the same as BD. So we are going to focus on point A and C, and we'll do the distance for these 2 points. So first, subtract the first values, 4 minus negative 3 squared plus 1 minus 0 squared. Let's extend the square root. So the first pair of numbers, 4 plus 3, it becomes plus 3. 4 plus 3 is 7. We are going to square this number. 1 minus 0 is 1. We are going to square that one. And we are going to square root everything. 7 squared is 49. And 1 squared is 1. If we add these together, we get 50. And then we are going to square that number. Now, this gives me another conclusion, which is that the diagonals are congruent. AC is the same as BD. Now we can say that as a conclusion, since the opposite sides are congruent and the diagonals are congruent, quadrilateral ABCD is a rectangle. That's all for this lesson, guys. Please comment below if you have any question, and I will see you in another video.